We also have Mr. Ryan Bennett here, one of the other instructional superintendents. Thank you again, guys, for being open to collaborating with the school on figuring out how to improve the school community. I will say just a couple of highlights for you all, because you guys don't get to see the behind the scene context. A lot of the work that you guys started here way back when you first sent your petition out, way back when you started to first have the conversation with the school, is actually being highlighted as a best practice for how scholars should engage with the school community, and it's being shared with all 28 schools in the Alliance. So you guys should feel honestly very proud about that. And I hope you have some sense that you are doing more than just working with O'Donovan and Ouchi now, that your influence has actually bled into the entire organization. So kudos to you all. I'll give you guys snaps because you guys deserve them. The other thing I wanted to just kind of take this opportunity to do is just to remind us of our norms as we further engage in this work. Just as a quick refresher, and I won't go into the details, but we had talked about maintaining positive intent. One concrete example of that was Rafael very eloquently established his understanding after Ms. Hahn shared kind of her own story around the miscommunication that happened in IG. And he recognized the fact that he wasn't coming from a place of positive intent. And so I think there's a strength to have shared his learning in that work. The second norm that we had named was allowing for equitable airtime and active listening. I would say the leadership team did a great job of addressing your concerns, exemplifying what active listening looks like from the leadership perspective. And then obviously allowing you guys to give feedback on their decision points and then making adjustments based on that. So I think both sides definitely held up to that norm. And so I just wanted to make sure I gave you a concrete example. And then finally, the last one was openness to improve together. And I think everyone has demonstrated that norm in particular because we have this follow-up meeting, because this wasn't a one-off meeting. And I don't anticipate this to even be the second end of the meeting. And so I think that like strong partnership of improving together is something that I want to highlight and make sure that we continue these norms as we move into this conversation today. Last thing I'm going to say, just in full transparency, Mr. Bennett and myself have another meeting happening simultaneously. So you will see our cameras turned off. However, we are on standby so people know to ping us in case there's anything that comes up. But I wanted to make sure that the students were aware so that you don't feel we're disconnected or aren't being active participants and devaluing the conversation that you're having here. Any quick questions about the norms or our role here? Otherwise, I'm going to turn it back to you all to continue the work that you started last week. All right, Ms. Trambo and Ms. Funes is all yours.
Thanks, Rudy. Appreciate that. So I'm glad we're able to continue our work together and reconnect with you guys once again. The goal for today is to further share our responses to the demands in the petition and to listen to any questions and or feedback you may have regarding our response. We want to stick to our committed
the communication won't be reported out at the board meeting. It'll be
we want to stick to our committed time of beginning at 4 and ending at 5. If we're unable to finish today, as we discussed last week, I'm hoping that we can keep our Tuesday 4 to 5 o'clock meeting block available and meet again next week to continue our responses. I would also like to ask that alumni, students, if you could provide us with written questions that you have for us that we can provide so that we can provide you a comprehensive response at a later meeting. So if you have questions about something that we talked about last week, maybe you can jot it down. If you have questions about anything we're presenting today, we do want you to ask and we'll prepare a detailed response for you if we don't have one today. So let me pause for a second. Are there any questions about any of that I just went over? Okay. So Mr. Gallegos, you want to share the screen with everyone? Awesome.
Can everyone see the screen? Great.
So last week we started with the transparency. As a recap, we bucketed our responses in 3 major areas. So one is transparency. We started talking about transparency and we stopped at that point. So we're going to pick up where we left off. So right now we're talking about budget, which also falls under transparency, and I'll start right there. So in response to the demands for budget, I wanted to start off by saying that we are a public school. So therefore, all decisions regarding budget are fully transparent per state and district guidelines. We are required to engage all stakeholders in the budget allocation process through the local control and accountability plan, that's LCAP, which is based on the local control funding formula, LCFF, all guided by the state requirements. We recognize the need to further engage all stakeholders by following up after gathering stakeholder input and presenting a clear plan of how our school budget was allocated to meet student needs and incorporate stakeholder feedback. So some of our current restorative practices are, as part of the LCAP, we present the budget to students, and that's usually done once a year during lunch with the principal. We also present it to staff during time devoted to professional development and parents during the town hall. We ask all constituents for input on how funds should be allocated and make adjustments based on their feedback. And a little bit more details on that. Part of that is presenting data to them, looking at the data and asking that based on the data, where do they feel we should spend money? And they give us input in it, and we have to use that input and determine where we're gonna add to our current budget. Both principals, teachers from both middle school and high school, parents from and students are represented during these meetings. So some of the changes and commitments moving forward. One is, if you take a look at the response to lunch with the principal under demand 8, that kind of covers one of the commitments. Another one is we will share what is presented at the town hall with stakeholders on the school website for all to view. So that's an extension of what we haven't done. Also, we will commit to creating a presentation that further shares our spending and budget with all Ouchi stakeholders. This presentation would outline how we will spend our budget for the following school year, and we will be available for all stakeholders, and it will be available for all stakeholders to review. Ms. Funes will go over the middle school piece.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. So to go over the section with budget, in addition to what Ms. Tremble shared, I just wanted to also include and share the transparency with funds. Our budget is posted on our school website, and that's something that legally we're expected to do. It is also reviewed and discussed on a monthly basis through our SSAC sessions. These sessions include all stakeholders, which of course encompass teachers, parents, students, as well as staff members. And these are open meetings that follow the Brown Act. With that said, agendas are posted within the 72-hour time period on our website, as well as in our school office. And they are announced through student announcements, through the school website, etc. And when we look at our governance structures, they also followed with public elections in which teachers can self-nominate themselves or others, same for students, as well as community members. But as we start thinking of moving forward, specifically in thinking of this particular demand that you lifted for us and considering next steps, some changes that we want to ensure that we are putting in place is to ensure that we're consistently publicly announcing that all stakeholders are welcome. Being that these sessions are open to the community, it's not members only type of session. So anyone and everyone is welcome to engage and be a part of these meetings, particularly in the portion where there are public comments. Anyone's able to definitely engage and participate during those sessions. So our commitment, of course, is to ensure that we're being much more vocal and transparent on ensuring that all community members are aware that these are open sessions in which budget is reviewed and covered and everyone's able to participate. Are there any questions or any feedback that you may have for us?
No. And again, if you think of something later, just jot it down and ask us, and we'll be happy to share a response with you.
My apologies. If everyone could just give me one moment to reshare the screen.
Marcus, and let you in.
Just so I'm clear with everyone, I've reshared the screen and I'm showing the pages that highlight the commitments so that you can see the commitments. And then speakers, if you're looking for your specific section, it would start around page 38. So now we're on teacher concerns.
So give me 1 second. I just need to pull up my document because I want to read it, make sure that I give you a comprehensive overview. So with teacher concerns, we recognize the need to prioritize socio-emotional and mental health for our entire school community. In the 2018-2019 school year, we trained our staff members on trauma-informed practices. In the 2019-2020 school year, we formed a committee for our multi-tiered systems of support. The acronym is MTSS program. We also recognize that an overall need to provide mental health support for both staff and students. We prioritize wellness checks for both staff and students during distance learning as we navigated challenges from COVID-19 and the death of one of our alumni. Public charter schools like ours tend to be a more pressured environment due to state and district expectations and requirements that are in place for our charter to continue to exist. We do realize that these expectations and requirements place a certain amount of pressure for all stakeholders, including the leadership team. In this reality, we recognize that staff turnover is inevitable. Some staff leave to seek promotions elsewhere, some staff relocate, some staff leave the teaching profession, and there are staff members who have transferred to other schools for a variety of reasons. Due to confidentiality, we're unable to disclose specifics on staff members' reasons for departure. Now I'm going to review with you our current restorative practices, and then I will share our commitments for the next school year with you. Our current restorative practices include: we hired a school psychologist during the 2019-2020 school year. Our school psychologists will continue their employment with us in the new school year. We introduced affinity spaces for our staff to collectively process the lived experiences of marginalized and oppressed groups and build community with one another. We have implemented changes to teacher schedules based on teacher feedback. For example, our professional development plans provided more planning time built into our weekly PD schedule. In the 2020-2021 school year, the culture team, comprised of the deans and one of our assistant principals, conducted on-site and virtual wellness during distance learning checks on students throughout 9th and 12th grade. And I apologize, that's the 2019-2020 school year. We have formed a crisis team to respond to student and staff crisis and provide intensive and targeted support to our community members. With the exception of AP testing, and I'm addressing specifically your comment about the counselors being overworked, I just want to make sure that you guys are aware that with the exception of AP testing, counselors are no longer responsible for other testing at Ouchi. This is to ensure that we create enough time on their schedules to devote to their 3 buckets of counseling, which includes academics, college and career readiness, and social emotional well-being. Having said this, I do want to review with you our commitments and summary of changes moving forward. We are committing to making the ranking system optional for students. So that was a huge deal for all of you, and we're committing to making that optional. We will consult students, and unless students request and or ask about the rank, we will not include that on their transcript. The Ouchi leadership team is committed to strengthening its relationship with the student body. We will accomplish this by implementing the following. We will host student-only affinity groups in an effort to create an emotionally safe space for students. We are committed to hiring a social worker beginning the 21-22 school year if funding becomes available. We're unable to do this right now because we don't have funding for it, particularly because we've been impacted by COVID, but we are committing to it for the 21-22 school year. We will appoint a neutral party to begin conducting exit interviews with all of our departing staff members. We're going to publicly share those findings with all of our stakeholders, including students and parents, and we will protect all departing staff members from any form of retaliation. That means that we're going to encourage our departing staff members to share the truth with this neutral person who's going to conduct the exit interviews without fear of retaliation. The exit interview questionnaire will be created through a collaborative process between school leadership team, teachers, students, and other stakeholders. What questions or what feedback do you have for us?
Okay, I'll move into. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Pablo.
So I just want to know the reasoning behind making the ranking system optional rather than getting rid of it entirely. Is there like a reason why you guys want it to be optional?
Yeah, so we did talk about this, Pablo. That's a really good question. And our rationale was there are schools that do require that. There are colleges that do require that, and some of our students do apply to those colleges. And for those students, if the college they're applying to requires that, we want to give them the option of like having that on their transcript to meet that requirement.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so in regards to the middle school, we, since the fall of 2011, the middle school has employed a counselor and hired an additional counselor for this upcoming school year. So we'll actually have 2 counselors and a school psychologist on site, or not on site because we're doing distance learning, but available for our students and staff this year. Starting in the year 2014, we've also had at least 1 counseling intern to provide additional support to the student body. During the 19-20 school year, along with our lead counselor, we actually had 2 interns as well as a school psychologist to address SEL, social emotional needs of the school site, which was in addition to our community circles that were also facilitated by teachers. But our commitments to this work that supports students as well as teachers is to have community circles that are conducted with students and staff weekly so that the staff also get their SEL needs met, and to host SEL workshops that are held for students and staff outside of the school day on topics that were derived from our SEL survey data. Are there any questions for the middle school? Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Hahn, by the way, is not able to be here. She has a doctor's appointment, but she will definitely make it next week. So I'll go ahead and cover the next section, which was designated for her. And we're jumping into our next theme now, which is student voice. So in response to the demand for a student voice, we absolutely agree that students have the right to exercise their First Amendment rights. No student should ever feel discouraged to speak out against injustices or use their voice to express concerns at our school. Students should never be threatened with punitive actions by any staff member. We value all Ouchi community members being able to respectfully and openly share their thoughts and concerns with the common goal of improving our school. Some of our current restorative practices we have to address this is in all department meetings, students have the opportunity to share their ideas and perspectives as it relates to the content in all departments, Students have opportunities to voice their concerns and ideas through ASB, lunch with the principal, and through student surveys. In the humanities department, students learn about social justice issues and have opportunities in the classroom to discuss these issues. Over the last 2 years, all staff are trained in restorative practices to center student voice and work with students to meet their needs. No staff is allowed to or encouraged to dismiss student feedback. Such a practice goes against our commitment to restorative justice. All students can report staff who fail to follow this commitment to the culture team. So our changes and commitments moving forward. 1, the principal, assistant principal, and deans will now host a monthly meeting to gather student voices. As outlined above, these meetings are open with no agenda, and students will safely be able to voice their opinion. The culture team will do quarterly student surveys that allow students to name issues facing the Ouchi community. And any staff member who has been accused of threatening a student or discouraging them from speaking up will be thoroughly investigated and addressed as appropriate. Ms. Fountain will review the middle school's response.
Okay. At the middle school level, students have multiple opportunities to exercise their First Amendment rights. Some of these opportunities include ASB, Associate Student Body, the SSAC, the School Site Advisory Council, which has elections annually. We have advisory representatives who also participate in any forum that we have regarding and the need for us to have student input. And we also have our town hall meetings. Last year, with me being one of the new APs, I held a monthly meet and greet as a way to get to know students and allow them to be heard on campus. But moving forward, we will be committed to providing monthly venues for student voices to be heard, as well as, I think it was mentioned before with a previous demand, that we were going to provide an opportunity for students who do serve as representatives of their student body, grade level, class, or the entire school to have a forum or a venue for actually sharing out what they have gained or information that they have retained from certain participation in different bodies or groups that we have on campus for them. And all of these meetings will be open to all students without an agenda, to allow them to have the freedom to speak on topics that they feel are relevant to them. Are there any questions in regards to student voice?
Okay. Any feedback on that section? Is there anything that you can think of that we may have missed that we should consider? Okay. So I'm going to move on to the next section, which is confidentiality. We're committed to maintaining student privacy and keeping all students safe. For any reports involving sexual assault, we have a set of practices that prioritize the safety and well-being of our students. We are also bound by confidentiality laws that prohibit administration from disclosing any information regarding a case that may result in potential disciplinary actions against the teacher, including alleged assault. What we can assure our school community is that we thoroughly investigate all allegations and follow proper protocol to ensure that we are not only protecting students, but also following the law. We recognize that even with all precautions and safeguards in place during our robust interview process, we realize that we can tighten our screening protocols even further to ensure that only qualified candidates pass the screening process to the interview phase. So some of our current restorative practices that we have in place is our protocol is that students can confidentially report an allegation to any staff member on campus, either in writing or in person. All staff are mandated reporters and must file a report with school administration. School administrators contact parents, families, and make an initial report to the LAPD. School administrators do an internal investigation while the LAPD conducts an external investigation. The LAPD follows up with the reporter of the investigation for any relevant next steps. School administration presents its final conclusion to the reporter and their family, as well as the subject of the investigation and their family. If a subject is found to be responsible, the school implements appropriate disciplinary measures as per Alliance and LAUSD guidelines. Reporters are offered ongoing social emotional support with our school psychologist. During an investigation, school administration keeps the incidents of the reporter and subject of the investigation confidential for the safety of all involved. Summary of changes and commitments moving forward. So here's what we'll do moving forward in addition to what was just mentioned. We are committed to tightening our screening protocol during the hiring process to ensure that only qualified candidates make it to the interview phase with our school community. We will continue to protect the identity of the reporters and subjects in sexual assault cases, and every report will continue to remain only under knowledge of administrators. We commit to making the reporting process more public and readily available for all stakeholders. We will display the reporting protocols throughout the school. We will continue to further educate our community on issues surrounding sexual misconduct and assault. And you can take a look at the response to the demand in number 4. We will create an online submission form for anyone to report an incident and post the form on our website so that it's accessible to everyone. We will share reporting protocols at least once a quarter with all advisories, so all students are knowledgeable about how to report. And now middle school.
So for middle school, as a complex, I just want to say as a complex, we are committed to maintaining student and family privacy and ensuring to keep our scholars safe by following all reporting processes as expected by confidentiality laws, and ensuring that we're following expectations and embedding any new staff members, teachers that we hire by ensuring that there are intensive background checks that are used and put in place prior to hiring any team member into our teams. We're also committed to ensuring that students feel seen and heard and believe this safe space is provided through our community circle work, as it does allow for scholars and teachers to dive into areas of vulnerability and connection, but acknowledge that other forums must be made available for scholars to feel safe by all adults that work within our site. We have and will continue to use outside investigators within Tier 3 reports that are made, such as sexual related allegations. Reviewing all internal investigation and follow-up processes to ensure that we are following a fair and equitable process. And reintroducing anonymous reporting to our scholars starting this school year. And last but not least, conducting one-on-one check-in sessions with our scholars to ensure that they are feeling seen and heard. And this will be something that will be led by our counseling team. So at this time, I would like to open it up for any feedback or clarifiers that you may have.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
So this is I guess this is both for the middle school and high school, because of the concerns that Nerilyn brought up at the Ouchi town hall meeting. I'm just wondering, because her story sounded like she was like staff members didn't handle it properly. She even called out a staff member for it. And then I noticed that staff member was on call on the Ouchi town hall, and they left when they were called out. And to me, it seemed kind of like an admission of guilt, or it seemed like they recognized that they did something wrong. And I'm just wondering how are staff members trained, or what's going to happen? How's the situation with that?
I could speak first. Again, I just want to reference confidentiality laws. I unfortunately cannot discuss and share publicly in reference to that specific case. But what I can share with you is that that particular situation was an example of something that was handed over to a third-party investigator group outside of internal investigation within our school site. And based on that, decisions were made, which were handled administratively based on guidance that was provided to school leadership. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's the most that I can share with you in reference to that one specific case.
And Raphael, I'm not familiar with the case that you mentioned, but you did ask about training. So as a heads up, every employee, teacher, aide, any adult employee on campus must be certified with training for child abuse and sexual assault. Every year there's a certification process that takes place where they are involved in like a 1-hour training, and they have to get a certificate. It's a part of our charter. It's a part of compliance.
I think in the spirit of active listening, what I hear underlined in Raphael's question is, when the person they're supposed to report to either appears to have done nothing or doesn't do anything, what's the follow-up plan for that?
So Rudy, I can answer that. I'm actually familiar with the case that Rafa brought up. And like Ms. Funes, I can't share details, but what I can share you is in that particular case, the LAPD was called, and the LAPD actually handled the external investigation. And something that I want to also just emphasize is that once it's in the hands of the LAPD, it is kind of out of our hands. What we can do is we can for example, alter schedules to make sure that the two parties are not necessarily interacting with each other. We can put in safety plans and behavior plans. But as far as like what the law enforcement is going to do about a particular case, they don't want our advice and they don't really consult us. And a lot of times they don't even give us updates, right? Because they're also bound by certain confidentiality laws.
I want to talk about it.
So I don't know if that answers your question or if that puts your mind at ease, but that's what I can share about that situation.
Yeah, that actually helps a bit. Thank you for everyone who responded. But I'm also just asking in general about how there are certain staff members on campus who have displayed, not only through this case that I brought up, but through other cases, not only about sexual assault, I'm just saying in this case and in other places, that they've displayed actions that seem to be dismissive, misogynistic, sometimes homophobic, things like that. And I'm just like, you guys are training people on them, but some staff members just don't seem to be getting it.
Yeah, I think, I know where you're getting at, Raphael. And we thought about that in our conversations when we started responding to the demands. And that was what we, the commitment that we made, like what we're doing now that we didn't do before, is at that internal process where if students want to make a complaint or if students want to express, like I was a part of an investigation and I don't feel like it was fairly investigated properly, like there's channel, they can submit a form, electronic form, and then we have to follow up on that. So that's the addition that we're doing now that we never did before.
Can I also add that, because I work with the culture team, right? And so we support our students just social emotionally and support the school with establishing a positive, inclusive environment for everybody. This past year and in years past, right, like any student could report anything to a staff member. And as mandated reporters, if it's about sexual assault, we're mandated reporters. We have to report it to our administrator, to the police, to the LAPD, to the Department of Children and Family Services. So like those cases, you know, go up, right? And it comes to comments that you mentioned, Raphael, like of a staff member allegedly being sexist, misogynistic, or homophobic, or any of these other, you know, things that could happen, right? All students are welcome to report that. Reports were made this past year, is what I can say. And just like with the sexual assault cases, right, they're investigated. As Ms. Tramble was saying, like the commitment we have this year moving forward is an online submission form, so that, you know, students can go and report it right then and there, right? Maybe they're not comfortable reporting it to, you know, a staff member on the culture team for whatever reason, right? They can go onto the website and submit a Google Doc where they can make the report, and then, you know, we can follow up appropriately. So I hope that answers your question about what would happen if staff members were displaying those kinds of behaviors.
Yes, thank you.
And if I was to add also, Raphael, I would also say, you know, just the consideration of keeping in mind like chain of command. So as a scholar, you report to, example, maybe it's a teacher, your counselor. Counselor works with assistant principal, and if we don't see satisfaction behind that, then it goes from AP to principal, principal to district level, etc. And so there's all these steps that you can absolutely take as a student, as a parent, as a community member. And depending on the situation itself, it could be an internal investigation that happens within school site where we follow specific processes, and or it could be external investigations, which at that point, such as Ms. Zaini shared, sometimes it's out of our jurisdiction. So like when it gets referred to LAPD, now we're bringing in legal, and if they find the allegation to be true, as an example, then, you know, the law takes over on what next proper steps are. But if they don't find what they're looking for to ensure that it's valid, then sometimes, you know, at that point, there's not much that as a school site we can do at that point.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Where like on this, like where would you find the online submission form? Like on the website, like on the school website?
It's going to be added. We haven't added it yet, but it will definitely be up before we start distance learning, August 12th. For the first day of school. It'll be up there and clearly visible so that you can see it, also in English and Spanish, to make it accessible for all students.
And it'll be communicated through advisory to students, letting them know that there is an avenue for them to express like unfair treatment. Any other questions? All right, we're gonna move on to the next, which is well-rounded. So I'll start off and then Ms. Funes will do the middle school response. We believe students need time built into the school day for college prep. Unfortunately, we will no longer offer college spring due to a deprioritization of standardized test prep since UCs and CSUs are no longer requiring SAT as part of the admission process. However, upon return to campus, we are offering college seminar as an enrichment for all seniors to prepare for the college application process. In regards to offering more life skills courses, Ouchi has been reflective in the historical implications of these courses on students and communities of color. Historically, life skill courses were utilized as a weapon against students of color and relegated their position to second-class citizenship, both inside and outside of the school. The walkouts that took place in Los Angeles and Denver organized by the Chicano student organizers and activists in order to demand equal access to rigorous and academic courses. It is imperative that we keep this in mind as we continue to push and prepare our students for college and beyond. Having said this, we are committed to examining and realigning our bell schedule and reallocating our minutes in order to meet the needs of our scholars in relation to the elective courses that are offered. This is a long-term goal and cannot be implemented immediately. However, we are committed to finding blocks or a block of time during the day where our students can have access and enjoy rich elective courses as stated above. So some of our current restorative practices in our 11th and 12th grade social studies courses, students explore civics law, culture, and social injustices through a variety of instructional practices, including Socratic seminar, debates, writing, and other projects. We have expanded our elective courses. We now offer art, film, and literature, as well as STEM and psychology. In recent years, our Ouchi School budget funded All-Star programming. So there's a question about All-Stars and the funding, and I just wanted to express that it was a couple years ago, the All-Star grant, the state didn't provide the All-Star grants to our school. So we actually, after we went through school site council, we decided to use the budget of the school to support the All-Stars program because we support and feel like that's something needed for our students. So we actually used our school budget to pay for All-Stars for 2 years until the grant was re-awarded. In the school year 2018-2019, in addition to 2019 and 2020, we provided all students with calculators for SAT testing. So we do have a set of calculators in every math class, and for students who take the SAT test in the past, we did provide them with a scientific calculator. Summary of changes and commitments moving forward: college seminar and an enrichment course for all seniors to prepare for the college application process will start the school year when we return back on campus. We are committed to examining our bell schedule and reallocating minutes toward new elective classes in order to meet the needs of our scholars in relation to the elective courses that are offered. So we're actually going to start a committee and include all stakeholders to really take a look at that, get some feedback, and make sure we're meeting everyone's needs in that way. We will continue to provide scientific calculators for every student in the math courses and take in any exam necessary. We will look into alternate partnerships to restart our sports program. A couple years ago, we did have a partnership with Crenshaw High School, and we had students who were able to play on their football team, basketball team, girls basketball, volleyball, and so forth. But unfortunately, when they switched principals, they dropped the program even after myself, Mr. Radu, and a couple students went to practically beg the principal to continue the partnership. He shut the door in our face and decided to end the program. So at this point, we're looking for other opportunities to expand our sports program. Hopefully soon, couple years, we'll have a gym, and that'll allow us to also expand our sports program. Ms. Funes?
Sure. So as we prepare to finalize plans for the 2021 school year, we're committed to brainstorming and identifying new innovative ways in which we can offer college prep program starting in middle school, looking at opportunities, whether that's seminars or college prep ideas that can be virtual for our scholars within our school program and within our middle school site. Currently, we do offer and have been offering for many years now, 8th grade portfolio, which many of you may have engaged in. And this, of course, is an experience that happens within the school day in which scholars gain the opportunity to create a resume, writing a college statement or essay, completing a mock college application, etc., and presenting it to the audience of peers and stakeholders in preparation for that graduating school year as kids prepare for college. We have also partnered as a complex to offer scholars opportunities to engage in career and college fairs with our high school. We are also a middle school that participates on an annual basis with the Commerce to College Fair experience, where students have an opportunity to engage with various colleges and get further information as young as middle school. Further, we provide students with an opportunity to complete 10 volunteer community service hours to help continue to promote students being well-rounded scholars in preparation for college. All scholars in our middle school also participate in a UC or college university field trip within their middle school experience. In addition to that, the participation in PSATs happens in 8th grade. But as we start thinking about 2021, one of the things that we are committed to offering are advanced courses in the areas of math and ELA, as well as offering a new course, which is called History and Facing Ourselves, so that students can start exploring more current events happening within our nation as we're living our current times. Also exploring, because of COVID crisis, having a field trip is probably not going to be feasible. However, virtual field trips can be an option and something that we do plan to explore with our middle school scholars. Our After School All-Stars partnership continues, and they certainly are also exploring many avenues from a virtual standpoint to provide students further opportunities and being well-rounded scholars, whether that's sports or whether that's college readiness opportunities. And last but not least, continuing our presentation of 8th grade portfolios, but also engaging in a virtual type experience, assuming that we'll continue to operate with a 100% type of virtual platform. With all that said, I would love to get any feedback that any of you may have so that we can further think as we're finalizing our 2021 school plans. around this idea of well-rounded scholars, or questions that you may have.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. So regarding the point in our demands, talking about the scientific calculators, this refers to an incident where we were told that we had to share a class set of 30 calculators. So I guess I just wanted to clarify that if any students do choose to take the SAT, as I know they're optional this year, there will be a system set up, or the students will be given the chance to get a calculator, whether that be the small ones given in chemistry, or the ones that the College Board asks, which will be the ones offered in math classes.
Yes. Yeah, I hear you. We order calculators every year, and we'll continue to order on an as needed basis. Not sure what happened, or if that's even okay for students to share a calculator during an exam. Like, that's the first time I heard of that, but we will try to avoid those situations as much as possible. Yeah, because that's not okay.
Thank you.
I want to bring up a point that may not be thought of completely. So I know because California decided to deprioritize the SAT and ACT, it would, by not, I guess, having support classes or workshops or things around that, maybe something that you guys ask for to, support the well-roundedness of students, to have space for other things. I think it also needs to be considered that some students may want to go to a college outside of California where they have not deprioritized the ACT and SAT. And so to really provide a well-rounded experience, there may be a need for some students to have access to support for those particular exams, so that they can be eligible or have the advantages that they would need to be a better candidate for a college that's maybe outside of California.
If I could just add to that point that Ms. Fountain made, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the UC Board of Regents only approved the deprioritizing of SAT and ACT for 2021 and 2022. Can someone just fact check me on that? Ryan, do you know for sure?
You are correct.
Okay. So I think the reason I bring up that stipulation is because, to Ms. Fountain's point, like, I think the short-term deprioritization plan might work, but in the long term, if the SATs and the ACTs do return, to that point, we might be disadvantaging some students. I just want to surface that as like a concern.
I also wanted to add to that. I agree with the points that you guys brought up, and then how you guys stated before that you guys are not using College Spring. That definitely, if students do need to take the SAT, they should be getting support for it. But when we were collecting our own data, students felt as though the resources they were getting now were not helpful at all, and that. So if definitely that students should be getting support on the SAT, but probably like in a different way or with a different program, because our students felt like they weren't those resources that we had before weren't helpful.
That's very helpful context, Raphael.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raphael.
Yes.
To add on to Raphael's point, I think a lot of the issue with College Spring as well was that it was after school, and how a lot of the times kids couldn't be there for certain reasons, and they either had to extensively explain why they couldn't be there, or they would get, for like advisory, I think they used it as a grade, that if you didn't show up you would get an NP. And I don't think that's fair to a lot of students, because you don't know what a student has to do. Maybe they have to work, maybe they have siblings to take care of, and having to do that after school isn't helpful for them.
Yes, I agree with that. And I hear you. We a part of another demand was that we're going to look at our bill schedule to see if we could try to include all of that within the school day as you guys recommended. I agree with you. We have a long day.
I would ask, is a Saturday or a weekend off the table as far as, you know, having something available for students?
I believe that would need to be offered to like if enough like students would do it. I know only a small portion of them would do it, as we did have to go in for SAT practice before on Saturdays. So I guess that could be brought up, but I don't know how students will respond to that. Maybe if SATs are like reinstated as part of the college application process, we could do like some sort of survey asking students what times they feel they're able to get that support.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Any other questions around this demand? It's 4:57, so we have 3 more minutes left. We did commit to our continued work every Tuesday, so I'm just gonna open it up to the group. We have 1 more demand left. We can push it over to next Tuesday and add to that like next steps, or we can go ahead and respond to this last demand now. I'm opening it up for the group. What are your thoughts? Stay, go. Shall we continue, or should we push it out for next week?
How how much is in that demand? Like, is it long? Because we also don't want to like take away from your guys' time.
It'd probably be like 5 minutes to present it, and then 5 minutes to take your feedback.
I mean, I can do it, but it depends on.
Yeah, I'm willing to stay to finish the demand.
Okay. So Mr. Gallegos and Ms. Fountain.
Yeah, let me just move my screen. Yep. So in response to the workshop's demand, we have been working on this part of the work actually throughout this past year. And so we're going to share a little bit about what that work list looked like, and then we're going to share where we're going next. So our current practices are that we have monthly counselor workshops that address sex ed, mental health, LGBTQIA+ rights, homeless/houselessness, healthy eating, and nutrition. We also had Change the Talk workshops, which were implemented in the school year 2018-2019 in order to educate students on rape culture, consent, health boundaries, and relationships. These workshops are conducted by Ouchi students in small circles and have proven effective and successful. In the beginning of the school year 1920, all Ouchi students were trained on their rights in regards to potential interactions with ICE. The same workshop was also conducted for our parents and families on a Saturday. In school year 1920, the LGBTQ+ Alliance was formed and met throughout the year. In school year 1819, the Ouchi Black Student Union was founded. The club met throughout that year and throughout the school year 1920. In school year 1920, staff participated in identity-based affinity groups where staff explored the impact of pressing school issues from a community-specific perspective. Some of these groups included a Black staff affinity space, a Latinx staff affinity space, a women of color affinity space, and an LGBTQ+ staff affinity space. So our commitments moving forward. Moving forward, we will implement a unified protocol, including an anonymous Google form, with which both students and teachers will be able to utilize to report concerns regarding acts of racism and other forms of discrimination. We will also explore smaller group settings to address sex ed, mental health, LGBTQIA+ rights, homeless/houselessness, healthy eating, and nutrition. Currently, we're exploring advisory as a forum for these important discussions. Student ambassadors will need to be fully trained to facilitate these conversations. And at the O'Donovan, students have begun participating in restorative circles where they discuss a wide range of topics. In school year 2021, we plan at the high school to debut advisory circles where students will discuss identity, race, and their lived experiences alongside peers and a teacher facilitator. Now I'll pass it over to Ms. Fountain.
Okay, so at the middle school, we have had workshops, student workshops that have been led by our counseling team thus far, but we are acknowledging that there's a need to address various topics such as LGBTQIA and race-specific sessions that we will be considering for this upcoming year. Brainstorming efforts for these various, with various stakeholders and leads will take place as we finalize our plans for the 2021 school year. Student-led workshops are a great addition to, and will certainly be considered and launched with these groups. We want to provide a safe space for conversations focusing on Black, Latinx, Asian, LGBTQIA, and survivors of various situations. Absolutely a great add-on to what we potentially are leading thus far. We want to add affinity groups, focus groups around these topics as well. Workshops on race with George Floyd and Black Lives Matter movement began when we in the mix of our distance learning through this past year, through something that we called fireside chats. And these happen with students, staff, and even parents to bring this awareness for these workshops and groups. And it will continue for the upcoming school year. We agree that all stakeholder voices need to be uplifted and shared life experiences need to be heard. So with that in mind, listening to students and ensuring to follow up and follow through needs to be a continuous process and a top priority at the site, and that's what we're committing to. And with that being said, are there any questions, comments, or feedback for how we addressed the need for workshops?
All right. So here's what I would propose, that maybe you guys could email me like some of the questions that you have in response to our demands. Do you have a copy of the document? If not, we'll definitely email it to you. And maybe you can email me like questions, and on our next meeting, if you give it to us by Friday, we could develop a response and be prepared to have a conversation with you about the responses to the questions, any other feedback that you have for us, and we can really together talk about like what are our next steps together. Are you able to commit to that?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Okay, so I'll email you the document and you guys can send me back the questions on Friday, by Friday, and I'll send another meeting marker for next Tuesday from 4 to 5 o'clock.
Okay. I also wanted to ask if it would be okay if you could like send us the recording or something for some of the students that couldn't be here today.
Absolutely, yeah. I'll definitely do that. No problem. All right, well, thanks everybody. It's been great again and very productive. Somebody hung up. Did they hang up already? Oh, I thought you disappeared. It's been very productive. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.